Magic the Gathering didn't appear out of nowhere, and its creator might not be telling the whole story about where it came from. Today, I'm investigating the biggest conspiracy in trading card game history. Richard Garfield often credits Cosmic Encounter as Magic's main inspiration. Watch any of the interviews about the origins of the game, and you will hear him gush about how he loved its modularity and replayability. But, based on my research, it's not a complete picture of the inspiration. There was another game that may have contributed a great deal to the design of Magic the Gathering. A game so controversial that its designers were raided by the FBI shortly after its release. A game that may have predicted 9/11, the death of Princess Diana, and even Trump's attempted assassination. There's evidence to suggest that the anonymity of this game, and the fact that it never gets mentioned, is part of a much larger conspiracy. Let's start by talking about the perfect poster child for the source of inspiration, Cosmic Encounter. For anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, Cosmic Encounter is a board game where you battle with other players using a simultaneous reveal mechanism. You both play one of these cards face down and then simultaneously flip them over, adding the number of ships on your side to the number on the card. The highest total wins, and all the ships on the losing side are destroyed. Because you don't draw up until you've used all your cards, it's a game about hand management, bluffing, and reading your opponents. But wait, there's one more major design piece, that each player is assigned one of 50 alien cards at the beginning of the game. These alien cards have rule-breaking mechanics printed on them. One of the simplest, this clone card, lets you retrieve a card from an encounter after the battle is resolved. Another, the pacifist, makes your negotiation cards trump attacks. This is the mechanic that Garfield borrowed, the design pattern later used by MTG card text. Base rules are simple, but specific exceptions printed on the cards expand the complexity and variation of the game drastically. That system becomes central to Magic, where every card is a localized rewrite of the rules. It's the perfect game to cite as your inspiration. It's a board game rather than a card game, and it's one mechanic that you borrowed that contributes a great deal to the magic of Magic. And that's just what Garfield does. Garfield writes, "My experiences with Cosmic Encounter and other games inspired me to create a game in 1982 called 5 Magics. But then where do the rest of the mechanics come from?" Garfield never mentions the other games. Why not? One of those games was almost definitely Illuminati, a card game that was created by Steve Jackson Games and released to the public in, you guessed it, 1982. Illuminati is a card game about conspiracies, institutions, and power structures. A game based on the Illuminatus trilogy, a series of novels by Robert Shea and Robert Anton Wilson about conflict between drug-dealing anti-heroes and a conspiratorial organization that secretly controls the world. The game had ideological suits baked directly into the mechanics. Straight, conservative, and liberal, peaceful, violent, and criminal. Every card carries alignments, and entire victory conditions were built around them. Garfield's prototype, 5 Magics, was also based on a novel, Master of the 5 Magics by Lynn and Harry. The novel describes 5 schools of magic. Each of these schools is totally separate and distinct from the rest, each with its own techniques, distinct laws, and constraints. 5 Magics formalized those distinctions, and the game created a basis for the color pie that exists in Magic. Beyond this, not much is known about 5 Magics, as it was never rose above prototype status, and its rules were never published. But we do know that it was a game where players drew from a shared deck, just like the first editions of Illuminati. Illuminati gameplay is about taking control of as many groups as possible in order to try and take over the world. Each of the societies or groups has a power and resistance, just like the power and toughness of MTG. And they have alignment, just like the color pie. You use your groups to battle for control over other groups from a communal pool, and build a network of influence. Each group in your network generates income each turn, which you use to expand and fight. Strip away the satire and rename your societies and groups to lands, items, and creatures, and you have the core feedback loop of Magic. Infrastructure becomes resources, resources become power. But why wouldn't Garfield cite Illuminati as his inspiration? Maybe it was a couple steps removed, so Garfield forgot about it. Or maybe he wanted to distance himself from too controversial a game. Or maybe there was something more to it. Remember that I mentioned the FBI raid? While quoting from Steve Jackson Games' website, On the morning of March 1st, 1990, without warning, a force of armed Secret Service agents occupied the offices of Steve Jackson Games and began to search for computer equipment. A large amount of equipment was seized. One of the computers was running the Illuminati BBS, bulletin board system. As Jackson reported it, the raid nearly, but not quite, drove the company out of business. Years later, players would circulate scans of cards showing skyscrapers exploding, Pentagon imagery, global collapse motifs. Maybe it was just a coincidence, maybe pattern seeking, but given what we know today about the existence of blackmail sex operations, deep state power structures, and the like, I'm talking about Jeffrey Epstein here, there could be a lot more at play. The FBI raid may have been an attempt to intimidate or tamper with the team at SJ Games to prevent them from growing the Illuminati franchise and awakening people to the fact that there are networks of power behind the scenes. Hell, it's even possible that SJ Games was working on a TCG version of Illuminati before Magic was ever released, and the FBI was in operation to steal their playtesting prototypes and documentation and scare them away from continuing development. Illuminati was ahead of its time. It had a resource system, ideological factions, emergent narrative, and asymmetrical power structures. Everything a modern trading card game would need. Steve Jackson was sitting on a skeleton of a genre-defining system. Then the government shows up, confiscates their data, and chills the studio. And a few years later, Magic the Gathering arrives, polished, sanitized, fantasy-skinned, and perfectly positioned for mass adoption. So you can ask the question, did the deep state prefer Garfield's mana over Jackson's conspiracies? You can imagine a world where instead of Magic being the biggest and first trading card game, it was Illuminati. Around their world, there would be thousands of groups, millions of gamers meeting up in person to play and talk about conspiracies and the deep state. Safely low-tech and outside of the watching eye of shadow organizations and state-controlled media. These offline groups would be away from the tech oligarchy's control, safe to organize and share information. Anyway, just as an aside to my conspiratorial rambling, there is an awesome nugget of truth in here. Our TCGs are incredible in that we get to hang out in person, focus on the game, and get away from the incessant drone of social media's attention-eroding brain rot. And now back to the rambling. Speaking of the tech oligarchy, Garfield also created a game called Netrunner. It's sort of the smoking gun in this whole argument. Years after Magic, Garfield designed what is an incredible game about manipulation, power struggle, and mega corporations and hackers, where hidden infrastructure, asymmetric information, and layered defenses define the battlefield. Netrunner uses a server infrastructure layout that matches Illuminati's connecting groups almost one-to-one. And the turn structure with 4 actions per turn matches Illuminati's 2 actions. The income system is almost identical, where the cards you control generate income. Even the game's countercultural anti-megacorp themes match up completely. The game has so many stark similarities it almost feels like a tribute to what Illuminati could have been. It's impossible to look at the 2 games side by side and claim that Garfield did not know or get inspiration from Illuminati. And yet he never once mentions the games as his source of inspiration. If the inspiration is clear and he never mentions it, there must be some reason to hide something. Magic's selective origin story feels curated. Cosmic Encounter is charming, it's friendly, it's politically neutral. Illuminati is not. It's about institutions, manipulation, and invisible hierarchies. Was Richard Garfield an FBI plant? A perfect front-facing genius story for a corporate mythos? Or was he given stolen playtesting documentation from the Illuminati TCG's development by the FBI in order to prevent the Illuminati TCG from becoming popular? Oh, and by the way, if the FBI is listening, it's just a fun way to talk about the interesting history of Magic and this game, Illuminati, which is the awesome game. If I was going to cite a game that is a more likely undisclosed inspiration for Magic, it would be this other game, King of the Tabletop. I mean, if you check it out, it's like basically the exact same thing. But yeah, I'll talk about that some other time. For now, thanks for watching. Keep staying offline and organizing. Peace.